Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Night Dead. I'm Matthew Slozer from Autumn Paranormal in beautiful Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Sorry, I need to have my reading glasses on tonight because I got a lot of notes for this one. There is a lot of information for our topic tonight. Given a little bit of time here because I know we have usually some advertisements on. Before we get rolling on this, I'm not sure which one's reflecting on my glasses here. It's kind of annoying me. I'm going to try to go without them. We'll see. I may have to move back or I may have to do because it's just the old age thing. Pulling this up here. But thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. It's been a very interesting week, obviously. Probably closest to World War III and nuclear war than it's ever been in my lifetime. Probably closest since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So prayers to everybody. But tonight, we're going to talk about QAnon conspiracy, which is actually pretty interesting, some of the stuff behind it. And it's actually some creepier stuff than you may realize. It's got some political things, but it's broader than that, which is why I wanted to go ahead and cover it. And because of that, and I don't know who we're going to have hopping in here and who all is going to be in the chat, so and who possibly sees this later. So I wanted to go ahead and kind of cover some basic stuff. Folks that are friends of the show and longtime participants in the show will know this already. So just bear with me for about 10 seconds here. So yeah, real quick. So folks know I am... Yeah, well, so let me get started here. So yeah, I kind of cover things that I just find interesting. And so that's why I'm doing this. And as I've kind of covered before when I've done some other topics here, and especially on one here that can be a little bit controversial, you guys are all adults. So I'm going to just cover this from a bunch of different angles and you guys can make up your own mind. That being said, as I try to cover this from a bunch of different angles, I will say things and probably cover angles and statements that could possibly piss off everyone, depending if you have passionate views on this. It's not my point on this to necessarily take sides on this. Folks, I know there's folks that cover this that are friends with me on social media. So if you do, you know where I stand on this and conspiracies in general, and know where I stand on some of these things politically. And I'm sure some of this will come through. I think, it's probably impossible for some biases not to come through on this. But I want to be really clear coming through on this, that this is not, and the intent on this is not to push a agenda, push a conclusion, push a certain feel from the whole conspiracies around this. It's more or less looking at things from at least what I found in going into this, and let you guys make your own decisions. That also being said, this is huge. There's a lot of rabbit trails on this thing. So for folks that really dive into this and folks that are really intense and into it, they'll be like, well, you missed this or you missed that, or you didn't cover this or you didn't cover that. Yeah, this is going to be kind of high level and kind of from how I saw on this. So, so again, just saying on this, and yeah, for Lonely Starseed, I've always heard it called kind of the QAnon theory. So like, yeah, say what you want. I guess I'll lead it off. Do I believe it? No. But again, I'm going to try to be fair and objective on these things. So yeah, I'm not someone that buys this, but let's dive into it. So it's funny, I said that and I lost some people. So I guess maybe folks thought I'd be on here pushing it. And the irony, I don't see dragons on here, which is funny because I brought out my port, and this is partially why I used to do this. I say, is it port? Is it not port? And I claim that I am really 85 years old. And the whole statements behind this all lead into what we're going to talk about tonight and the joke behind that. So we're going to lead this thing off with something called adrenochrome. If you've ever heard about this, And you'll see some of the posts about this. And adrenochrome is we're going to get a little bit of chemistry in here. I'm a chemist, if folks don't know that. Adrenochrome is the oxidation product of adrenaline. So, when you're get that rush from your adrenal glands, or you hear these stories of, somebody's trapped under a car and somebody else runs and is able to pick up the car. That is that rush of adrenaline, or I believe it's also the same as epinephrine. Don't give me hatred if I'm off on that, but I believe they are the same. But anyway, there was research in the 50s, and some researchers thought that it actually played a role, this oxidation product of adrenaline, adrenochrome, played a role in schizophrenia. And so there was some research done saying that maybe this buildup in the brain would cause mental problems. And Mary's saying happy birthday. I'd always say this is celebrating my 32nd birthday, but I'm really 85, but I just look younger because I drink the blood of young people, which we'll get to what we're talking about. So I'll let you guys decide as we get through this, am I drinking port, or am I really a reptilian throwing out deception here because I'm drinking blood? Yeah, we'll get to this. Anyway, so he felt that this buildup of this oxidation product from adrenaline, adrenochrome, would cause psychic problems, and actually was one of the root causes of schizophrenia. So there was research done on this. Then there was some small trials done, very small sample size. We're talking 10, 12 people. And they were giving this adrenochrome to people, and they were finding that it was triggering psychotic reactions. So, people would be dosed with this stuff and it would make them kind of crazy. Now, where this gets a whole lot of momentum in this theory, and it was referenced in A Clockwork Orange, but probably at least what gets assumed as what the story that gives a lot of momentum behind adrenochrome and a lot of these theories that start branching out from this is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas from Hunter S. Thompson. And there's a lawyer that shows up. They run this big drug binge, if you've ever read the book or seen the movie. And at one point, this lawyer shows up and opens up this little... Christine asked if I have a type preference for my libation. So, this is port. I drink a lot of whiskey, and I will mix it up. If I'm out and buying cocktails, I will tend to get a Manhattan or an old fashioned. In the summer, I like gin and tonic. I know we're going totally on a rabbit trail here, but at times I will like tequilas. Not a big beer person. Sometimes wine. So I hope that answers it, Christine. So I will say this is port, but I like to play along to my conspiracy folks and tell them that it's blood and I'm really in my 80s. Back to our story. So opens up the thing, pulls out this little thing of adrenochrome, says, you take a little of this thing, you're going to go totally nuts. And you realize you can't get this from blood type. Ha ha ha. Yes. Now I get it. I get where you're going. AB is the best because it's the rarest. It's the best vintage. So now I gotcha. Yes, AB is the best because it's the rarest. Anyway, so we get to so he says, you can't get this from a corpse. It's got to be a live person to get that adrenaline to get it from, which starts this whole theory that you must isolate adrenochrome by abusing somebody and then getting the blood from somebody that you're putting them through pain. Kind of the same concept of you get to bull baiting and things about how, they would stress out animals before slaughtering them because it, enhances the meat. It's that same kind of concept. Hunter S. Thompson in interviews later said he made the whole thing up, but that doesn't change the fact that this has kind of gotten out there then, that you can't, this has to get isolated from somebody under stress. Actually, adrenochrome can be purchased. Adrenochrome is not all that expensive. So this kind of idea that it is this very exotic, very hard to get thing that needs to get isolated from abusing someone isn't really true. But that being said, So this starts the whole theory about there are groups out there that, and what's going to happen with this whole thing is, and you'll see it. And I tried to line this out that this will build, just so you guys know. This is like a ball of yarn. There's all these different threads that eventually all kind of combine into one thing. And it's not that everybody believes in the whole piece. Best way I describe it is there's all these different kind of like trails or threads that all eventually kind of merge. And so, you know, some people might believe 20% of it. Some people might believe 80% of it. Some people have more, I would say, out there explanations as to why it's going on. Some might have more grounded explanations. So there's different trails and there's a whole different spectrum of beliefs in this. So to say it's like one kind of theory or one kind of like, this gets very broad. So I tried to break this out and build it out in the most logical manner. So just bear with me on this. So anyway, this sets one of the threads as to why people would want to kind of abuse children is to gain access to this drug, more or less, that gives them this high, gives them this power, has some kind of psychological power to it. Which gets to another piece, which that is something called blood libel, which this goes all the way back and really goes back to the book of Maccabees, which my background is Catholic, so that is in the Catholic Bible. It was removed. There's a bunch of books that got removed in the Protestant Bible, so not everybody would have this. But actually, the book of Maccabees actually is the story that leads to Hanukkah. But there was a Greek, I don't know if he was a general or just like the king or emperor. I forget the full story. But Antiochus Epiphanes. And he got into the Jewish temple and defiled it. Actually, some of the references in Revelation, some believe that it's actually referencing Antiochus Epiphanes. That happened prior to when Revelation was written. So there's some kind of weird things. I believe he did take a pig, which is an unclean animal to the Jews, and defiled the temple on it. But he laid claim that when he got into the temple, he found that the Jews had a Greek captive in the temple that they were fattening up to sacrifice. Hey, Macy. And this kind of was the start of this kind of legend. And this has carried through. This has actually carried. You can find references to like all the way up to like 2021 of this. This idea that Jews sacrifice, and I have to be very clear so I don't get like flagged or anything. I'm not saying this. I'm saying that people were alleging this. I'm not saying this. Would sacrifice people and use blood in their rituals. This evolved into an idea that Jews would sacrifice Christians, specifically Christian children, and use the blood for Passover. This gained ground, and this is this whole blood libel, and you'll see this ties into a whole nother thread from this. In 1144, William of Norwich was found murdered in England. And there was a Jewish population in Norwich, and they ultimately got blamed for it. And this was then used as a excuse for mobs to attack the Jewish population there. And eventually this got to the point where the Jewish population ultimately got expelled from all of England in 1290 and didn't return into the 1600s. And this actually paralleled in all of continental Europe. In France, it happened in 1171, 1235, 1270. These were all followed by massacres or persecutions of Jewish populations in this time. And it was all followed and all around this concept of that children, it was usually children, were being sacrificed and their blood was being used in it was particularly around Passover, but would be used in rituals. So this kind of idea of blood libel. This will be important because you'll see as we get through this whole kind of Q theories and stuff on this, that there is this anti-Semitic thread that goes through all this. It'll end up tying to like George Soros and the Rothschilds, and there's a anti-Semitic thread that goes through a lot of this as well, as to where kind of like, Jews are behind a lot of these evil things. And so you'll see this will come up over and over in this as well. This goes off and on. It tends to spike. So again, around the 19th century, particularly in Russia, there's another big spike of these claims, this kind of blood libel, and so a big persecution of Jewish populations. And then again, actually in the early 2000s, this spiked again. Some places in the Middle East, and actually fairly recently, this has come up again, which is very interesting that you're seeing this kind of get pulled into some of these other stories of blood rituals and people being persecuted for that. There's also another angle of this, and we'll elaborate on this a little bit later, of satanic rituals and blood being used. And so that there's these satanic groups that are capturing people and doing human trafficking and doing things along those lines to capture people for blood and using blood for their different rituals. So then you get to this interesting thing of blood research that has come out. And so there's been some work from MIT where they were taking blood from young mice and injecting it into old mice. Let's sip of my blood right now. And they found that the brains of the old mice all of a sudden drastically improved. Like it was almost like a fountain of youth for the mice brains. They could almost do the same thing with taking blood from old mice and injecting it into young mice, and it would like degrade the young mice. Then there's a firm, I believe near Stanford. I don't know if it's associated with Stanford or not. It was somewhere in Northern California that is now doing like plasma infusions where they will take young blood and infuse it into anyone older as a anti-aging, or it claims to have benefits, and it's like crazy expensive. I think it's like $8,000 a treatment to do this. So this has set up a whole bunch of speculation out there that elites are paying to have the blood of young people infused into them to make them stay younger. And so this has fueled all kinds of not that they're necessarily abusing people, but this has particularly some folks that look very young. So I've heard it associated with Gwen Stefani, Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other ones that it's like, they don't look like they're aging. Well, they don't look like they're aging because they're infusing themselves with the blood of teenagers, or that kind of. So again, this kind of fits into this piece as well. And then this kind of morphs into this idea that there are these trafficking rings where young people are getting captured and abused, and their blood's being used for either this to isolate adrenochrome, or for satanic rituals, or for this kind of fountain of youth, or all of the above. Kind of pick your poison as to what's going on. Now, this also goes to, there was supposedly a snuff video out. This is where it starts morphing into kind of the political stuff. And I forget what it was called now. It was like Frizzle Face or something like that. I have to say, it was never found. This has never been found. So this is one of those kind of almost like urban legends that there's a whole bunch of these out there. There's one about these orangutans, and like in Brazil, where the orangutans are getting like massacred in the zoo, and then people even do these like reaction videos, but you never see it, and the people just all like react to it with like noise in the back. But like the video, there's nowhere anywhere of documented evidence that the video exists. This is kind of that same story. But what is claimed is that this is a snuff video that has Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin, who was Anthony Weiner's wife, torturing and murdering a young girl in a satanic ritual drinking her blood and then using her skin to make these masks in this like satanic ritual. And even some of these lyrics, I think, were used in a song. And there's like all these references out there in media. And so, you know, supposedly this video was out, and this kind of started a whole bunch of stuff going out. And this leads to Pizzagate, if you've heard of Pizzagate, and if you hear references about emails. So in 2016, John Podesta, who was working for the Clinton campaign, had his emails hacked, and WikiLeaks leaked those emails out. And from those, there were coded messages. I should say that. Use the wrong phrase. There were claims that there was coded messages in the emails that supposedly tied to pedophilia, satanic rituals, things that linked that there was all this involvement with elites and the campaign tied into all these rituals. And supposedly, I'm not even going to name the place because there's so many bad things happened to it, but there was a pizzeria in Washington, D.C. where supposedly was the meeting place where all this happened. And I'll say there's a college really close to here, Elon University. Christine says, I'm going to share that, Christine, because I agree on this. There's a chance that is an overall urban legend, totally. That there may never have been a snuff film made anywhere. That is just a dark web urban legend. This orangutan one, I may have to do a story on that one eventually. Anyway, it's horrible. If you read the story of what that video supposedly is, it's horrible. It's hard to even read what it is, but it makes you feel better to know that it's totally made up. But I'm like actually disturbed that somebody even like mentally thought to think of even writing that. It's extreme, like animal abuse. It's bad. But they showed that there was very early on, there was a disproportionate amount of tweets that referenced Pizzagate that were coming from, and these are weird countries, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, and Vietnam. And that is something I'm going to say for all of these is there's a huge role, even today with things, just keep in mind, it's not that they necessarily originate from, but like Russia has these like troll farms in like Africa and like these weird countries, and China does the same thing. And so they'll take this stuff, and what they'll do is they'll act as like magnifiers. So they'll take like a story and they'll just like amplify it so that it looks more legitimate than maybe it really was. And so, and the whole thing is just to cause disruption. So it's like that whisper down the alley thing. It's just to churn stuff up. So again, this churns it up. So there's this disproportionate, probably troll farms in Cyprus, Czech Republic, and Vietnam now amping up this. There's a pizzeria where child abuse is happening. Hillary emails leaked from Podesta. So this starts this up. So now it starts getting momentum. Builds even more momentum because Turkey and their pro-government news agencies. And Turkey's like a weird one because they're an ally, but they don't really like U.S. So it's this weird kind of thing. They start taking the story and start publishing it on their newspapers. So now it's starting to get like published as news stories that there's a, abuse ring. They meet at this pizza place. So this not only gives it more momentum, but it gives it more legitimacy. So now this is building even more momentum. It's in the papers. It's in the news. It's printed. It must be true. So now it's really starting to gain more momentum. Sadly, what happens now is the owner of the restaurant starts getting threats by this and harassed, and employees. I could just imagine if your kid just ends up working at this like pizza place or something. They start having like their pictures like spread out over like, the internet and stuff. And, whether you want to believe it's real or Photoshop, but, they'll say things like, they're wearing a yellow hat and the yellow hat is code for da, 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 da. And so this thing just starts like building to where like, people are getting threatened over this. It spread. So now like businesses down the street are getting associated with this and getting tied to it. They're starting to say that the logo is a satanic message tied to it. And so this just starts building, and it's spreading to other businesses. It's spreading out there that they're all like tied into this, and the people are tied into this. And so just kind of the online and the overall like harassing things start growing on that. So then in 2016, this is funny because Salisbury, North Carolina, it's like half an hour away from me. So pride and joy of my home state. Edgar Welch, believing he was a rescuer of children and a hero, drives to the pizzeria and fires 3 shots into the building. Fortunately, no one was killed. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Because again, no matter where you fall on this, I would say, whether you believe stuff's going on, I can say with almost 100% certainty, I am sure that not every employee and in there is part of some, satanic group abusing kids, even if you want to go that far to believing that in there. And so like, somebody going in there and shooting, or, somebody going in there just buying a slice of pizza. So, fortunately nobody was killed. Nobody was hurt. Ironically, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison by the person that is now, I shouldn't even say this because this will fuel the conspiracy. Because I said earlier, like I'm being neutral on this, but I don't buy the conspiracy stuff. This will fuel conspiracy, folks. He was sentenced by the person that is now nominated to be on the Supreme Court. Anyway, sentenced to 4 years. So that was that. I got to get caught up to where I'm at now. As I told you, I had to do a lot of notes on this because there's a lot. And as I said again, this show would go way too long if I tried to cover all the different threads in this. So I'm kind of going high level. You guys can dive into any more on this than you want to. So some more attacks. As I said, it kept spreading. Just any business on the block then started getting associated with this. Some of it even, it starts just getting. There was even things where there were pictures of people in France that were somehow getting to. You know how this starts working. Then they start getting associated with people on that same block, and so it just spread. And so it definitely got to the point where it was spreading, whether this was legit or not, to people that were not involved and getting like threatened by it. So anyway, in 2019 there was an arson attack that the place got firebombed, put out. I mean, the place still got okay. I already covered there's satanic claims of satanic symbols in the logo. There was also claims that there's this underground network underneath the building, kind of connecting everything. And there were supposedly pictures of it. The pictures are from somewhere else. There is no basement or underground levels where these specific businesses are located. But again, that's not unusual. Now, where this starts linking to other things is Michael Flynn. This is where it all starts connecting. Around the election time, Michael Flynn, who was working for the Trump campaign, started tweeting stories linking to Podesta emails, Pizzagate, pedophile rings, human trafficking, satanic cults, and all this began to combine. So remember when I said there's all these different threads that kind of unite, and then some folks buy the whole thing. Some people kind of latch onto pieces of it. It all kind of starts. Kind of Michael Flynn is the nexus of where all these things start coming in. And we don't have the Q source yet. So anyway, so this all starts coming in. And to his point, he then said, until proven to be false, this will remain a big story. Or this will remain to be a story, and kept throwing things out. And this is one of the things I'll say about all these, and this is why I'm kind of anti-conspiracy, about all these kind of stories, particularly when you start talking about these big overlord type things, is much like when people claim the apocalypse, and then like the apocalypse doesn't happen, and then they just kind of change, like the narrative just changes then. Because like if you say A is going to happen and then A doesn't happen, then it's just like, well, it's because they knew about it and then they went ahead and they covered it up. Like it becomes this shifting thing. So I'll just say, so this there becomes plausible deniability throughout all of this, which then kind of makes the whole thing smoky. But anyway, this then starts to get merged with the Epstein. So that's why you always hear this, that's why there's all this fascination with Epstein and Epstein, Pedo Island and all these other things with that, because there's folks that connect all of that and all the shady stuff that went on with him to these other pieces as well, that, it's tied in with the blood stuff and, this big broader network of things that are going on. The other piece that, at least a theory that's out there, and remember what I said earlier, that I'm just covering different angles on this, and wherever you fall in this, you may get annoyed by what I'm saying. So I'm just covering different angles. So don't shoot the messenger on this, because I feel this one could piss some people off. So I'm just, again, throwing things out here. There's a theory on the fixation on this whole human trafficking and pedophilia stuff was a way to give some level of moral cover and kind of a good moral message behind the whole Trump campaign to kind of cover a guy who morally was pretty, and I will say, at least on my end, I always found it kind of interesting, because at least from my end as a neutral, I'll say it, politically, I'm kind of neutral. I really hate both sides. I always found it very curious that I knew people that actually would use the quotes that they thought Bill Clinton was the Antichrist. And from my view, I kind of view Trump as, at least ethically and stuff, he's kind of like the Republican version of Bill Clinton, at least from like a moral standpoint. So, I was always kind of curious as to like how one guy could be this great man and the other guy was like the Antichrist, when like morally they both seem kind of similar. Personal ethics. And so this is one of the theories, that if you have like a big high, they have this big high moral thing, it gives a little bit of cover towards, just grab them by the X and, the three wives and the infidelity and all, those are the very creepy statements and behavior around his own daughter, all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff. So I don't know, man. What I hear a lot, I'll just go this way. What I used to hear a lot on him was the infidelity piece. And I'd say the latter guy's got the first guy beat on that front. So yeah, I'll just go there. I don't know who's got the higher body count when it comes to that, but if I had to bet money, I'd bet money that Mr. T's got a higher infidelity body count than Mr. C. But anyway, not for me to say. That's not how I judge my leaders. Anyway, yeah. So, but again, I'm going sideways. I said my bias would come through. You folks that know me know I really don't like our former president and think he's ethically a really, really, really bad guy. So, but I'm not going to let that go read into this stuff. I'm being neutral. Okay, so we'll get into the Q stuff. So how this all starts tying in then is on 4chan, a guy called, or I'm assuming guy, I shouldn't say that. Q clearance, Patriot, calm before the storm. You heard a lot of these references of, storm. And this idea, and this is what always scared me. See the thing that always bothered me. I'm going to go ahead and say this because I think I have some friends watching and I argue with them a lot, but the autocracy things always bothered me about the last guy. And it was this kind of stuff that always bothered me. And take what you want. Again, stay neutral. These were the things that were like red flags for me. Take it either way. Dude, I'm not going to argue with no one, but I don't know if I'd go that far. Again, if you're going to, I would not want to bet that you couldn't have those 3 wives without cheating on them. And my own thing is, if you're going to cheat on your spouse, there's definitely no way you would cheat on me. So, and I'd be willing to bet my house that he had infidelity. But anyway, let's not go there. So anyway, let me get back to this. These were the red flags. This is the stuff that gives me like the big red flags. That thousands of people were going to be arrested, imprisoned, and executed for being part of the part of this child porn eating pedophiles. Now, to me, I see that as no different as Putin yesterday saying that the Ukrainian government were drug dealers and needed to be put to death. Once we're starting to round people up as, whether they're infidels, I get nervous when any government says they're going to round up and clean up people for any reason on that. Well, anyway, then the claim in the storm was that Hillary, and don't get me wrong, people that know me too, like I despise the Clintons. So don't folks that don't know me, you probably would make some bad assumptions in either way on this. That Hillary would be arrested, that Trump was moving to remove all the criminal elements from the government, and that there were all these secret signs that were being dropped. And it was like all kinds of funny things like he wore a yellow tie, this meant this, or, this different part for this. So, those different kind of things. So anyway, then Alex Jones claimed to be in contact with him. Hannity and Roseanne Barr would start dropping references. So again, this kind of builds credibility, kind of builds some things in this. And so even Q started being like references and quotes in certain sermons in certain churches. Another interesting thing, I'll say my view. My view of, as I said, I'm not. We've talked a lot about that. I kind of do the same thing on this, and I think Christine will vouch with me that I'm pretty open-ended and fair all the way around on this stuff. So anyone that's new on this, don't send me hate mail and stuff on this. I really do stay up, but there were some disturbing things that I saw with some of the evangelical churches, and this was one of the things. Regardless of how they feel on stuff, this stuff getting incorporated into sermons and stuff, particularly when some of the things are talking about rounding up and killing people, that bugs me. I'll just say it. So anyway, then there was analysts being done. And again, on this analytics that were done, again, found that it didn't originate, but in 2017, so this is after election, Russian troll farms did a really big job in amplifying this. So again, they didn't originate it, but I've said this all along. They do a great job of, China does this too, of taking these stories, and if they feel it's going to be disruptive, they amp it. So it's almost like advertising on social media. If they see something that they think's going to cause problems, they'll just spout it out there times 1,000 just to so that it gets momentum. And so that's kind of what happened with this. So it got out there and it got a lot more momentum. Then the Russian media jumped on this and was starting to use it as justification that look how divided the U.S. was. That all this thing was going on, that was being divided. And again, I'm not saying right, wrong on this. What I was saying, just to be sure on this, was and I'll just count out since why I was on there, because I'll kick trolls out here right now. If you got something to say other than just trolling on here, why say it? Otherwise, I'll kick your ass off here. So anyway, so on that piece, what I was saying on this. So they used it as to show there was great division. So by 2020, though, it was interesting. The analytics went in there and yeah, Steph, Illuminati's on my list too. Obviously not tonight, but Illuminati will be one too. By 2020, it shifted, and it's not from Russia any. So I find this very interesting. Where most of the amplification, not most, but I'll say 25%. A lot of the amplification from this after the election has been from China. So again, just, whether you agree, disagree, folks amping this stuff up are folks that like people arguing more than anything else on this. So anyway, let's get into some of the predictions on this and some of the major topics that would go onto some of these drops were some of these things that we talked about before. Epstein, the blood cults, human trafficking, again, all the lines. And again, as I had said before, it's not that everybody believes all these things I'm saying. Like I said, some believe the whole thing, some tie them all together. Like, I think most people are definitely going to say that there's human trafficking problems, but I don't think the same number of people that are going to say there's human trafficking problems are going to say that people are human trafficking to harvest blood. I hope that makes sense. Same with like the deep state stuff. I'm sure people believe that there's, shady stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but what that shady stuff is, there's some people that believe it's stuff going on to usher in the Antichrist. And then there's other people that just believe it's, CIA, dark ops type stuff. But deep state stuff, see some of the stuff I just told you my eyes are just getting bad, but I don't want to put my glasses on. Antifa, Planned Parenthood harvesting fetuses, again, for blood and adrenochrome type stuff. Iran and North Korea, corruption in the U.S. government, China, corruption in the U.S. government, Hunter Biden. So, you hear all this stuff. Again, you see it online. You see it on all these different things. I'm not saying right or wrong. Like most of these things, it's probably, like most rumors, there's probably partial truths to all of this stuff. And then it just morphs into weird directions on things. And then, as I said earlier, in all these things, particularly Russia and China will take these things, twist it in different ways, and then amp it up and just send stuff out there. Some of these more specific claims. This one I find really, really interesting. That Kim Jong-un, who happened to fire off more missiles over the weekend, missile tests, is actually a CIA plant and a puppet of the U.S. government. I find that one really interesting. There was a guy, excuse my dogs, they will go off every show, so I just apologize. There was a DNC staff member, Seth Rich, that was murdered. Never solved, so it is kind of a mysterious murder. There was a claim that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I believe used to be head of the DNC, forgive me if I have that info wrong. I know she was high up in the DNC. I think she was the head of it. That she hired the gang MS-13 to murder him because of his involvement in leaking the Podesta emails. That Angela Merkel, the head of Germany, was actually Hitler's granddaughter. That Obama, Hillary, Soros were all planning a coup against Trump to remove him from office to protect the sex trafficking pedophile ring. That the Mueller and I've actually saw a lot of details on this next one. Saw a lot of articles people were sharing on this one. That the Mueller investigation was actually a counter coup that was ultimately going to expose the Democratic Party as being heavily involved in this child human trafficking ring and get them all exposed on this. And then if you joined later, you probably maybe didn't hear this one. This is a very old trope. This isn't anything unique to Q. I go back to the anti-Semitism stuff, that the Rothschilds are, this global cabal behind lots of evil in the world, and they're actually a satanic cult moving behind the scenes to do lots of this stuff. I will say, regardless of what you think, and I'm not vouching for either of these groups one way or the other, I'm just being there is this kind of anti-Semitic trope that always goes along with the Rothschild and the Soros bashing. I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they're bad, but I also will say that there's always this kind of anti-Jewish tag that also goes along with, and it's an old story, money, it's all those old tropes tag along with some of that stuff. So that's, and again, I don't want to be a broken record on this but I'm trying to be sensitive to folks that maybe hopped on this. Again, I just want to reiterate what I said in the beginning of this, that, the whole point of this show and my show in general, and not this show specifically, is you guys are all adults. You guys can make up your own mind. So I just wanted to reiterate that I try to do my research and present this just to present. So I'm not trying to push or advocate any conclusion on this. I'm throwing things out. I actually try not to show any bias in when I do it, but I'm human. I am sure that in just my conversations and comments here, I'm sure some biases come through, but I'm honestly trying to be very, very objective on this and not be very pro or con on any pieces of this. So I'm sure I'm hoping that's coming out that way. And my only rule in this is that folks be respectful and not, if anyone's too nasty, I'll call that out. But other than that, again, trying to be good. All right, so we're getting to the end here. Again, I just write out all the research. I don't really try to time it to an hour, but they all kind of come up good on this. Well, thank you, Wyatt. I appreciate that. So then this gets to the storm, which gets really interesting. This is kind of, for me personally, and again, I'm not going to get into my own personal opinions on it, but to me personally, this set off like some red flags and light bulbs with me and actually drove some of my biases, which came out earlier on some of this stuff, which I appreciate all you guys' opinions on, our government and all our pieces. And I think people have fair, points all the way across on these things. But some worrisome stuff comes from me on some of these things that I'm going to come out here soon. So when they start talking about the storm, and so that was supposed to be the battle between Trump and these sex traffickers. And there was a lot of call to action in a lot of these messages for the patriots. Now, what that specifically was, it was a lot of things. I even saw it too. It was a lot of like, wake up. Are you awake yet? What that specific call was at least from what I saw, and I certainly wasn't very deep in this, so don't think, but it always was kind of vague to me as to what the ask was. But there was obviously this implication in here. And I'm not saying it's true or false, but it's obviously implied that most of the government and the media was corrupt. But I will say this is the part that I'll always call this a red flag no matter what. I'm not saying specific to Trump. I'll just say this is a red flag to me in anything. Religion, business, government, anything. This next statement always is a red flag to me. Only a small core of people, Trump and a core of supporters, were not corrupt, and the military was going to take control, eliminate corruption, and restore order and clean everything up. Now, even if it's true, we're the only ones that aren't corrupt. Trust us. We're going to get rid of everybody else and clean everything up. Worries me. That's all I'm going to say. Not saying good or not saying right or wrong. It just, I always don't like giving the keys to a bunch of people saying, just trust us. We're the ones that know everything. All right. So people that were flagged as being heavily involved in this are Biden, Hillary, the Dalai Lama, Tom Hanks, Obama, George Soros, Ellen DeGeneres, Fauci, Bill Gates, Lady Gaga, Oprah, Pope Francis, Chrissy Teigen. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more. Those are just a list of them. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind here on the chat, so let me go through. Well, Christine, you asked about the anti-Semitism. The one reference I had, Antiochus Epiphanes, I think that was BC. I forget exactly. I have to look that up, but that was Greek Empire. So I don't know when that was. Is that 400 BC 3? I forget when the Greek Empire was. Instead, I will agree. Here's the one thing I will say too. Man, I apologize. I will say in advance, I apologize if I kind of, because again, I don't want to go bias here, but I feel this is staying off. This is related, but I don't feel this is biasing anything in here. I feel, and I think this is a foundation for our country too, I feel power will always corrupt. And so I feel in general, as a rule, and some people on here that know me well will know this, as a general rule, I'm an advocate of principle over pragmatism. I guess that's where I kind of differ with what's gone on kind of politically over the last couple of years. I'm not willing to sacrifice principles for benefit. And so for me, I feel power always corrupts. And so we're best served if power is dispersed as much as possible. And I think that is one of the foundations of our country, is to keep power from being too consolidated. And so when I see things and I see efforts to try to consolidate power, even if it is for allegedly good intentions and for efficacy, it scares me and I go against it. So I hope that makes sense to folks. So it's more when I kind of rebel against things on that, that's where it's coming from. I firmly believe power will corrupt pretty much anyone and anything. So I don't want to see it consolidated anywhere because I think ultimately it ends badly for anyone involved. So excuse my sidebar there. We get into the election. So then, the prediction was in 2020, the election would be this landslide and then the storm would be implemented. It didn't happen, which I'll get to some side things there. But really after the election, then the whole Q thing lost a lot of momentum after that. And so, lost a lot of momentum. But then one of the theories came out, and again, this is another red flag. Again, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying personally for me, this was something that made me nervous. You get to the election or the inauguration, and one of the theories, and I read this before the 6th, January 6th, and then when I read a lot of this stuff before January 6th, and then when I saw January 6th happen, I was like, holy shit. So there was predictions that the 6th was a trap for the Dems, and that there was going to be mass arrests, and this is the line that freaks me out, and that there were going to be mass executions. And, there was some articles and some statements about this was the opportunity that Trump had to cross the Rubicon, which if you know the Caesar things, that's when the Roman Republic died and the Roman Empire started. Again, he didn't say that, but these were other people involved saying this. And that they were posted there was going to be martial law declared. I don't know if anybody saw, there were like memes going out that Q related, that this is what the military is saying and that you're going to see these things and you're going to see martial law declared and do not panic. Just stay in your homes. We're just restoring order. Everything will be okay in a week. And so this was all stuff prior to Jan 6 that were coming out, maybe like Jan 4, Jan 5. It was like right before. And then all that stuff happened and it was very, I'll just say from my perspective, it was very, very creepy. When it happened. So then that all happened. It all played out. And then there was this idea that he was going to be, reinstated after the 6th, or that, that all this thing was going to happen and that he was going to get done. That didn't happen. So then there were going to be all these kind of other theories started coming out. And, one is, and this is actually kind of one of the undercurrents with the whole, I personally think one of the undercurrents with the whole kind of rage on COVID was that COVID was a counterplot by these other forces to prevent the storm from ever happening. And not only prevent the storm from ever happening, but to punish those who were supporting it. So if you look at, and I mean, this is true. If you look at what the COVID and I honestly, if you put me on a debate team right now, I honestly feel I could make a very strong argument on either side of this. I could make a very strong public health argument as to why things were done the way they were. There were mistakes made, why they were done the way they were. I could make a very strong argument why things were done to screw over people who were supportive of the previous administration. You can make, and so that's why I don't fault anybody on either side of this, because there's enough things that fall on both sides of that I actually feel there's like probably elements of truth on both ends, to be honest. And so it's not all of one, all of the other. It's a mix. But it disproportionately affected, obviously not to the person, but if you look at general buckets of support, it disproportionately impacted core elements of support of the previous administration. When you look at, a lot of small business owners got hurt, like those businesses got shut down, whereas kind of the more overclass, big box stores and stuff were allowed to stay open. Now, from the public health side, they'll say, well, if we could minimize how many places stayed open, it's better to keep a place open that, sells 80 things versus keeping 80 places open that sell one thing. That you can make both arguments, but at the end of the day, one group got screwed a lot worse than others. So again, you can go on either side of this, but it certainly feeds the theory. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, it feeds the theory that this was a pushback. And then, as I read earlier, a lot of folks tied in the current administration were already named as people involved in these, this ring, this group, whether they're like drinking blood or just involved in these conspiracies. So it feeds this pushback. Some of the other pieces on this were that that Arizona audit was going to expose widespread fraud and start a domino effect that would go from state to state and lead to an overturn of the election. The California recall vote was going to be shown to be fraudulent, and that was going to cause a national audit that was going to be shown to be that the election was fraudulent and be shown to be a national recall. Personally on this one, and I've argued with friends on this, whether you want to go one way or the other, it seems that, and I'm not a legal expert, but from my understanding and everything, it seems like the legal avenues are kind of exhausted. I don't think there's going to be any profound overturn thing. I think you got to live to fight in 2024. If you're on that side, I don't think you're going to see any overturns of anything. You got to live to fight in 2024. And that's that. I don't think these things that were predicted are going to play out. And I didn't think they would, but that's me. Then this one, which I find really bizarre. If anyone in here is more familiar and has any information on this, I'd love to know what drove this. I couldn't find stuff, but I was a little cautious as to how far down some of these rabbit trails I was going to go because I wasn't sure what would get triggered or what list I get on. That JFK Jr. would return, that he actually isn't dead, that he would return and declare Trump the real president and he would be the vice president. Now, this one's just weird to me because the Kennedys are kind of like uber liberal. And so it's just an odd character to like kind of come out and be associated with all of this. So I just found this whole thing weird. And the fact that he's dead, or at least supposedly dead, and would be the guy that like it's just, that one's just really weird to me. And that's actually the last item I have. I can like hang out and chat and answer some questions or things at the end of it. But yeah, it's weird. Well, it's funny, Christine, you say that. I will say that you guys are probably, I've made my predictions on this. I think you're probably right with the one, even in 2022, with the one exception. And I know when we did the astrology show, I made my predictions. I do think, and I'm hoping this doesn't happen, but I do think that if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, which I did predict would happen in April, that changes the whole dynamic. And then it's defeat getting taken out of the jaws of victory. And that I still think it's not going to be, there's no scenario where the left does well, but I think that would keep things pretty even for 2022. And then we'll see. Honestly, for me, now I'll admit I'm showing bias here. For me, I'm hoping that, I'm hoping nothing bad happens to him, but I'm hoping just an age thing happens with Trump, that he's so old that he doesn't want to be seen in public. And, I'd rather, I could stomach somebody like DeSantis more than I could stomach Trump. But yeah, that's me. So I know my bias showed at the end. Folks that follow me on social media know I really don't like the former guy. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope except for my last statement here, that I stayed neutral enough for everybody, and hope you guys all enjoyed this. Not sure what next week I'm going to do, but I got to be honest with what's going on in the world. One of my lists of shows was I was going to do all of the nuclear close calls, because some folks might not know. We all came close to a nuclear war like in 1985. And actually, there's a pretty long list of nuclear close calls between us, the Soviet Union, and some other things. But yeah, so that's Well, it's funny. I'll go ahead and share just because hopefully I don't get hate mail here. I'm actually, when you do like the political, like where I'm at philosophically, this is where it gets really tough. I'm almost straight down the middle. I'm pretty balanced all the way along. So that kind of means I can live with either side, but I don't really like either side. So when you get to like that, that also means that kind of the interpersonal stuff can get a little magnified. And so as a person, like I really dislike that former guy. And so that probably plays a little bit of a disproportionate, a really disproportionate, anyone who knows me too, I'm extremely anti-authoritarian. So anybody that's like a my way or the highway and I know all and like I hate those personality types, like hate them. So yeah, he's just generally the kind of personality type of person that I would definitely not look up to and kind of hate. So same thing with a guy like Putin, like anybody like that. Those folks that people will call as like strong leader, those are I hate those guys. So sidebar, don't hold it against. I hope you don't hold it against me. I don't hold it against you guys. It is what it is. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will all talk soon. Have a great week. Hopefully we're all here next Sunday and that nothing really bad happens. Take care, everybody. Hug the ones you love. Talk to you soon.